Hello everybody, I'm just reading some stories to my dog Alfie. He's here. Now, when Alfie and I read a story at night time, just before bed, what we like to do is we like to make it nice and dark and quiet so we can listen and be mindful of the story. I've got a little girl in my class who loves the Mr. Men stories, and they're Alfie's favourites too. So I'm going to read this one to you. It's called Mr. Tickle. It was a warm, sunny morning. Sorry about Alfie. In his house, on the other side of the wood, Mr. Tickle was asleep. You did not know that there was such a thing as a tickle, did you? Well, there is. Tickles are small and round, and they have arms that stretch and stretch. Extraordinarily long arms. Mr. Tickle was fast asleep. There he is, look. He was having a dream. It must have been a very funny dream because it made him laugh out loud, and that woke him up. He sat up in bed, stretched out his extraordinarily long arms, and yawned an enormous yawn. Oh. Mr. Tickle felt hungry, so do you know what he did? He reached out, there he is, look, with his extraordinarily long arms. Opened the bedroom door, reached down the stairs, opened the kitchen door, and reached into the kitchen cupboard, opened the biscuit tin, took out a biscuit, and brought it back upstairs, in through the bedroom door, and back to Mr. Tickle in bed. As you can see, it's useful indeed, having arms as long as Mr. Tickle's. Mr. Tickle munched his biscuit. He looked out of the window. Oh, today looks very much like a tickling day, he said to himself. There he is, he's gone out. So, later that morning, after Mr. Tickle had made his bed and cooked his breakfast, he set off through the wood. As he walked along, he kept his eyes open very wide, looking for somebody to tickle. Looking for anybody to tickle. I think you'd like that, Alf. You like it when I tickle you on your tummy, don't you? Eventually, Mr. Tickle came to a school. There was nobody about. So, reaching up his extraordinarily long arms to a high window ledge, Mr. Tickle pulled himself up and peeped in through the open window. Now, I think you're wondering what that word means. Extraordinary. It means it's very, 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 very different and new and exciting and very, 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 very long. Inside you could see a classroom. There were children sitting at their desks and a teacher writing on the blackboard. Here he is. Doesn't look like me, does he? And then the page again. Mr. Tickle waited a minute and then he reached in through the window. Mr. Tickle's extraordinary long arm, that means it's very, very, very out of the ordinary, it's so long, went right up to the teacher, paused, that means he stopped a little bit, and then he tickled. Tickle, tickle, tickle. The teacher jumped in the air and turned around very quickly to see who was there, but there was nobody there. How strange. Mr. Tickle grinned a mischievous grin. Now, if you're being mischievous, it means you're up to mischief, you're up to no good. You're being a little bit naughty. Playing a trick, perhaps. You could be mischievous then. He waited another minute and then tickled the teacher again. This time he kept tickling until soon the teacher was laughing out loud saying, "Stop! Oh, stop! Stop it!" over and over again. All the children were laughing too at such a funny sight. There was a terrible pandemonium. That's a big word. Pandemonium. Shall we clap it? Pandemonium. Pandemonium. 5 syllables. That means it's a really long word. Now, a terrible pandemonium is a terrible fuss. There might be lots of noise. They'll all be laughing and making a big noise. It's a pandemonium. A great big fuss. Eventually, Mr. Tickle thought that he had had enough fun, so he gave the teacher one more tickle for luck, and then very quietly brought his arm back through the open window. Chuckling to himself, he jumped down from the window, leaving the poor teacher to explain what that was all about. Which, of course, he couldn't. And then Mr. Tickle went to town. And what a day Mr. Tickle had. He tickled the policeman on traffic duty at the crossroads in the middle of town. It caused an enormous traffic jam. I think he's getting up to too much mischief. He tickled the greengrocer just as he was piling up apples neatly in his shop window. Oh dear. The greengrocer fell over backwards and the apples rolled all over the shop. I don't think the greengrocer, that's the man here who sells the apples, will be very pleased. They'll be bruised. At the railway station, the guard was about to wave his flag for the train to leave. He lifted his arm in the air. Mr. Tickle tickled him. Oh dear. And every time he tried to wave his flag, Mr. Tickle tickled him until the train was 10 minutes late. 10 whole minutes late. Leaving the station, and all the passengers were furious. And that means they were very, very cross. I bet they were hungry, they wanted their tea. That day, Mr. Tickle tickled everybody. He tickled the doctor, he tickled the butcher. Oh dear. He even tickled old Mr. Stamp, the postman, who dropped all of his letters in a puddle. Oops. Then Mr. Tickle went home. Sitting in his armchair in his small house at the other side of the wood, he laughed and laughed every time he thought about all of the people he had tickled. So, if you're in any way ticklish, beware of Mr. Tickle and those extraordinary long arms of his. Just think, perhaps he's somewhere about at this very moment while you are listening to this story. Perhaps that extraordinarily long arm of his is already creeping up to the door of this room. Perhaps it's opening the door now, coming into the room. Perhaps before you know what's happening, you will be well and truly tickled. That's the story for today. I wonder which story it's going to be tomorrow. I might choose another Mr. Man story because I do like them very much, and I've got a great big box full of them. Alfie, Alf, come on get a tickle. Come on Alf, let me tickle you. That's a good boy. Good boy. See you tomorrow for another story.